Wow, wow, wow. I'm looking at some of the headlines, and this is going to be a very interesting week, I tell you. Will the center hold is one of the big questions being asked on the front pages today. Good morning. This is the Morning Cafe. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. And as always, how hot is the coffee where you are?
I'm used to Stanley Jerungita. How is your marvelous morning this day? I had a fantastic weekend because Manchester United won. I hope that you also had a fantastic weekend.
You know, I'm trying to look at all the dailies to see if at all that is news. And clearly it's not. It is not news. Let's focus on the news.
And also tell you what to expect for today.
All right. As I said, there's going to be a lot of very interesting discussions, and yes, the power panel will be on standby this morning. Samuel Pogisio, Philip Kisia, Kiputo Rapkirwa, and Honorable Dr. Mumbinga will be in studio to take a look at some of the interesting headlines coming from the weekend. Manchester United will not be part of the discussion. I can assure you that.
I mean, it could be just telling you that what you expect doesn't always come to be. On the 31st of May, 2024 is World No Tobacco Day. We discussed that this morning, just taking a look at the grim figures by World Health Organization. They had a whole report earlier this year, just taking a look at how the figures are looking like globally, in Africa as well as Kenya, and what we need to do to end this particular menace when it comes to that. It's a Monday, so Matters First Aid coming up your way at the tail end of the show. Diabetic emergency as well as spinal cord injury. Anthony Gillo from St. John Ambulance will be joining us for that conversation. Stick around for that.
All right, let's take a quick look at the headlines this morning. Abandoned hustlers is a big headline on the front page of the Standard, and they talk about the priorities and what has changed so far. The indication is that this administration has more or less, according to this story, abandoned the bottom-up economic model. But yes, we'll be looking at that in depth later on. On the Daily Nation,
our tea farmers lost 600 million Kenya shillings. They call it a bitter taste. And I mean, you realize that each kind of daily has its own different story. So it's as if, Monday they're trying to have one-lined story.
But there is a common thread, and it's what's happening within Kenya Kwanza. Will the center hold? This story is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Let's see if at all it's on any other daily. Matters Business. High earners handed tax-free per diems in new finance bill. Oh, okay. But those are high earners. Wale wengine watalipa ushuru. Proposed law allows tax-free per diem at 5% of gross pay.
All right.
That's
before you cross over, there's a because I know we'll get into this, but then it's definitely good to just take a look at the very top scroll. They always have Matters Fitness, then they say beer for dinner, Albert's secret to fitness at 56.
Oh, yes.
Do you copy?
Copy. Ushirika wao watikisa mlima, habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Tutaangazia zaidi masuala haya.
On the Star, financial mess at Kenyatta National Hospital in 5 billion Kenya shillings whole.
Wow.
Okay.
On the People Daily, tough laws on demos. Yes, it's a new legislation where conveners of protests and assemblies will be held legally liable for that. And of course, Ruto defending his cheap US flight. Cheap US flight.
Regional matters, Biden's plan to eclipse Chinese influence in East Africa. They say US elevates Kenya to pivotal position in trade, security, and diplomacy with funding for an expressway along China-built SGR, military hardware, debt relief. Moise on pages 4 and 5. And reminds me of a question that President William Ruto was asked by CNN's anchor. Saying, are you facing east or are you facing west? And saying, well, we're just facing forward. Yes, just really.
East or west?
Yes, east or west. For him, it's forward.
In Uganda this morning, they're talking about something different. Why new Kampala Jinja roadworks have stalled. That's a big story on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Down there, they talk about Muhoozi being the new bishop. Okay, fine, not Muhoozi, the chief of generals, not Kainerugaba. This is Matters Church. Muhoozi is new bishop of North Ankole Diocese.
Alfred Muhoozi.
On the New Vision, school heads face arrest of a ghost learners. I think this is the very first negative headline about education in Uganda we've seen from the Ugandan papers. It's always good news about education from Uganda. Oh, teachers are getting this, relief from this. These are the best teachers. These are the best schools. Today, they have ghost learners. We have ghost schools in Kenya. We are one up.
Then we have no ghost learners. We have ghost schools.
We have ghost schools.
Si mtu wakuje huku basi.
Waingie kwa hii. In Tanzania?
Into Tanzania, Mchuchuma Liganga projects marking time. This has to do with the firm spearheading the $3 billion project says the government has yet to publish approved incentives, but the Trade and Industry Ministry has accused the investor of failing to attend negotiations. This has to do with the matters, mining and all that.
There's an interesting headline there about El Nino not being responsible for East Africa's floods. I know many people have said, oh, this is still what we've experienced over the last couple of months, could be effects of El Nino, but they say, El Nino has nothing to do with that. Do we have any other daily from, no? Okay.
Let's take a look at other matters. So, okay, we can start with the weather. So this is an outlook by the Kenya Meteorological Department, taking a look at the rainfall forecast, specifically Nairobi. Shortly, I'll be taking a look at other parts of the country. So this is a forecast, so yesterday, 9 a.m., all the way to today as of 9 a.m., specifically in the constituencies in Nairobi. And it shows you, well, a majority of it will be green. So it shows the green, which is, let me just tap into that and zoom in for you. So according to the scale there, the green is 15, between 20 all the way to negative to below, which is majority of it. But key interestingly is this yellow bit, which is parts of Langata that will be getting, let's say, above average rainfall, that is between 60 to around 70, 50 to 70 there, the shade of yellow. Other bits just between there, Langata as well as Embakasi, and bits of Embakasi, both south as well as east, will be getting rainfall, less rainfall, between 25 to around 30, 20 to around 35 there. But that is how things are looking like. Let me show you how other bits of the country are looking like. So we do start with Kisumu. Hali ya hewa kule Kisumu is 20 degrees Celsius, and they say kunyesha, precipitation is 0%, and things are looking like that until 3 p.m., sunny intervals for the day, but then it promises to probably have some above average kind of rainfall with thunderstorms getting into the evening, but then that might deteriorate into the day. That is Kisumu. Into Nairobi, this Google always gives us Nairobi and its metropolitan region. I'm talking about Kiambu, parts of Kajiado as well. 16 degrees Celsius. Precipitation is over 5%. Let me just update that and show you how things are looking like. Sunny intervals as of the afternoon, same as Kisumu. And then chances of it raining seem to be high, 60%, getting into the evening. So as you probably leave work for today, there might be chances of some light showers up at Napale. And finally, into Kajiado, you can help with that, Fred. So this is Kajiado, its metropolitan region. 15 degrees Celsius, kunyesha 5%. It's seemingly as the same as, not much difference from the one in Nairobi. Right. Sunny intervals getting into the evening by 5 p.m. when you leave work. Some light showers, very light, 40% there. And then getting into the night, some not too cold kind of evenings, 18 degrees Celsius. Right.
So it looks like we're in for a more or less relatively drier week.
Oh, yes.
In comparison to what we witnessed last week or the week before.
The week before.
Let's now take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi and yes. All right. And this one should, yes, thank you. Panikami imeenda Russia. Where exactly is this?
It went all the way to Machakos.
Okay. So chumvi na upande ingine, so turudi hivi. Turudi maeneo ya Nairobi.
Shike barabara hadi
tumefika airport. And this is Nairobi, and if you look at it from afar, the only incident so far from the main tributaries is somewhere in Githurai. We can see a bit of red here. Immediately after Githurai,
It's quite a long strip of red.
Yes, probably there's an incident there early morning. Immediately after Githurai towards town, there's a bit of a snarl up there, indicating that probably could be an incident there, but after that, everything else is smooth all the way into town. Of course, once you get to the Pangani interchange, it slows down as well. It is red at this time of day. So this is a problem area, but it's normal. You could actually spend like 15 to 20 minutes there. So do plan for that if you're coming from Thika Road or Kiambu Road, because yes, it's already busy at this time of day. Let's take a look at the other parts of the city, and we'd seen the Mombasa Road. Mombasa Road is looking rather clear this day, and of course bits that are probably problematic there opposite Imara Daima. I'm not sure if that is on top of the expressway or the main Mombasa Road, but there's a snarl up there.
Looks like, because when you zoom in, there's...
It could be the entry to the expressway.
Yeah.
But after that, it's smooth all the way into town. So Mombasa Road, nothing much to report there. So yes, all the way into town, it's looking nice. Langata Road 2 is looking good, all the way back from Langata, Aerodrome, past Wilson Airport, and all the way. Mbagathi Way 2 is also looking good. Nothing much to report. Ngong Road, Prestige Plaza there, of course, because of the lights, a bit slow, but nothing to worry about. Let's go to the other major tributary, which is Waiyaki Way. And Waiyaki Way is here. Yes, Waiyaki Way 2 looking good, past ABC into town, nothing to report. And finally, Jogoo Road, because that's usually the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can see Jogoo Road. At Makadara, it's very slow there. Immediately after Makadara Loco, it's coming towards town, it's red. And also here at City Stadium roundabout, it's red at this time. So if you're planning to use Jogoo Road, a bit slow this morning. Landis Road also, and Haile Selassie Avenue getting into town from that direction. Also a bit problematic.
Oh yes, so because it's a Monday and you live around Buruburu and you were told your interview starts at around 8 a.m.
Ulifaa utoke kitambo.
Ulikuwa utoke?
Ulikuwa utoke.
Yeah, anza kutuwatch na YouTube sahi. Oh yes. That is how things are looking like for today as of, what time is it?
It's about 6:15.
Yes.
6 a.m.
Oh yes.
So yes, do you have the diary?
I'll take a look at the diary briefly, but then we can take a look at Today in History as we dive into the papers.
All right, then let's go straight to the newspapers now. And let's start off with the Standard. And on the Standard, the big headline is Abandoned Hustlers. Priority change. They say that President William Ruto has said Kenyans are not paying their fair share of taxes and that he was going to increase the rates. However, looking at the budget to be read in a few weeks' time, the government's priorities have shifted from the Mwananchi initiatives to other key areas. A story extensively covered on page 4. And they say that there's a proposal to trim agriculture budget by 12 billion shillings. Medical services reduced by 10.6 billion. I'll be talking about this later on. The services like vaccines for children. Things like funding for ARVs and HIV programs has also been reduced. Matters education. Education vote to be trimmed by 55 billion, both higher and basic education. Matters roads, the Ministry of Roads will see 48 billion shillings hived off. And petroleum too suffers as the plan is to reduce its budget by 25 billion shillings. And for this reason, the Standard says this is akin to the hustlers being abandoned by this government. The other story given prominence on the front page is a court blow to Uhuru Kin over 3 billion shilling land. Kenya Commercial Bank has won a protracted legal battle against former President Uhuru Kenyatta's cousins over a 443-acre piece of land. That story is on page 6. You can read it there. Yes, there's mention of the president's preferred mode of transport for that state visit to the U.S. And the president yesterday responded through a tweet and says, it's cheaper Ruto says on hiring private jet. President defended his use of the luxury aeroplane to the US, claiming it was less expensive compared to flying in the national carrier Kenya Airways.
But he should have given us numbers of the tabulation of if, if he used KQ, how much will it have been cumulatively, and then comparing with for the private jet. Just so that we take a look at the numbers and see, okay, so this is what you mean versus this.
Okay. All right. I'm sure this is going to be one of the biggest discussions that we're still talking about, the trip to the US. On the top strip of the Standard, Sudi hits back at Deputy President as allies cry foul over budget. A story is on page 8 and 9. Also a big discussion this whole week, the cracks within the Kenya Kwanza formation. Why Kenya needed new choppers, that's on page 5. That's a story also coming from the president's trip to the US. There was a donation of about 16 choppers from the US military, and 8 of them are ways. The international scene, close to 700 dead in Papua landslide. And in sports, stars emerge as Rugby Super Series ends. That's the front page. On the back page, they have Chebet, the ever-smiling assassin. She broke the 10,000 meters world record and booked her place in Team Kenya to Paris. Omanyala makes return to the podium after finishing second behind American Coleman. And there we have an image of Kenya's Beatrice Chebet winning the 10,000 meters with a world record during the Prefontaine Classic on Saturday. And yes, Makofi for Beatrice Chebet. Congratulations for winning that race and breaking the record. That's the Standard this morning.
On the Daily Nation, how tea farmers lost 600 billion cash shillings. Those days that you wake up for a bitter kind of a taste in your mouth. They say some 620,000 small-scale tea farmers lost 600 million cash shillings in dubious transactions by top officials at the Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA. An audit report presented to President William Ruto recently has revealed. And the president has demanded that action be taken on the masterminds of the well-orchestrated and massive plan that has impoverished hardworking farmers countrywide. So from, we never really rest, by the way. From fake fertilizer to fake schools, now we're getting into a whole tea scandal. On the bottom is one of those conversations that will form politics for this week. They ask, Daily Nation asks, will the center hold? They say the political marriage between President William Ruto and his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, is facing a litmus test as the Cold War between the two Kenya Kwanza Alliance honchos rages. So even as the DP dismisses talk of bad blood between him and his boss, he still accuses the president's allies of political meddling in his Mount Kenya backyard. Is this the making of a political fallout? Question they're asking there. There are a couple of highlights on the front page as well. On the left, do start off with matters HIV. You rarely see HIV matters on the front page of Kenyan dailies. But I mean, this doesn't really even have to do with HIV and the state of HIV, but then matters tender. They say state sued over 366 million cash shillings HIV testing kits tender. So a Chinese company has sued the government for classifying its HIV testing kits as substandard, resulting in the firm being denied a 366 million cash shillings deal. Interesting. On the top, school feeding, they say empty bellies, empty desks, hidden cries of childhood hunger. So for many learners in Kenya's marginalized north, school lunches, however meager, are a small beacon of hope in their otherwise bleak existence. At the very top scroll, page 12, another conversation that will form and will continue this week. Kenya police mission to Haiti put on hold. The base to host officers yet to be completed. That's probably what we are told, but then there might be some undertones that we don't really know. Another story that I'll take you all the way to page 6. It says the private jet was cheaper than flying KQ, Ruto says on trip. So Daily Nation has quoted some figures now on page 6. 98 million, that is the cost of President Ruto's one-way trip to the US for a state visit aboard a Boeing 737-700 business jet operated by Royal Jet of Dubai. Meanwhile, 2.4 million cash shillings hourly charges for the plane Dr. Ruto used for his US trip. A visit to Royal Jet website shows that the group's Boeing business jets is the leading VIP airliner on the market, available for charter. Now, I'm so curious, how much will it have been if KQ was used? But, well, that's the front page of Daily Nation. Or the back page, Matters Sports, record-breaking Chebet sets tone for Olympics. And on the top, by the way, is a very interesting story. So the FKF Cup semi-finals were happening yesterday. FC Leopards versus Kenya Police. And so today, that match is actually, I believe, scheduled to continue. So it was stopped at the 60th minute yesterday. It was interrupted at that time. So they're set to continue with it today in closed doors. Okay. From the 60th, so they're set to pick it up from the 60th minute all the way and continue. Now imagine if this happens even in international football.
Football is a beautiful game. All right. Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo. Wanasema ushirika wao watikisa mlima. Ni ushirika wa nani? Madai ya usaliti, madai kuwa naibu rais ameanza kutengwa yameibua mchecheto katika ukanda wa Mlima Kenya, wakihofia hatua hiyo huenda ikamzuia Rigathi kutimiza miradi ya maendeleo na kijamii aliyopewa. Urafiki wa Ruto na Raila waingiza baridi Mlima Kenya kwa hofu ya kigogo wao kutengwa. Habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Vidokezo zaidi, wafanyakazi 700 Homa Bay kufutwa. Kwingineko, ukimwi China sasa yashtaki Kenya. Tunaangazia habari ambazo ni muhimu. So tuende pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Waganga nao walilia utambuzi. Matabibu wa kienyeji wataka watambuliwe kwa kazi wanayofanya.
Atu kiruka bado
kwingineko masuala ya ndege. Tunasema
atu kiruka bado nitaiangazia tu. Pep ajilaumu pale kando kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo. Pep ajilaumu baada ya kupepetwa. Asema mbinu zake ndizo zilizoponza Man City katika fainali ya FA dhidi ya Man U.
Lakini nadhani kama Wakenya tumesonga mbele, tunaendelea na masuala ambayo yanatuhusu zaidi. Wanasema Ruto atetea ndege gali. Asema iwapo yeye na ruba yake wangetumia ndege za KQ hadi Amerika, gharama ingekuwa juu zaidi. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 3. Hilo ndio gazeti la Taifa Leo hii leo.
Let's move on to another daily, on to probably the Star, and take a look at financial mess at KNH Hospital in 5 billion cash shillings hold. So they say the skewed NHIF contracts, low Linda Mama rates sinking country's biggest referral facility. They call it matters suspicious. The audit reveals possible fraudulent activities in cash collection system. More on pages 4 and 5. But on the bottom, we have a photo there in the name of the Father. Officers seek God's protection. Fred actually speak about matters, even officers seeking God's protection. In US today is what they call Memorial Day. So it's a day, it's a whole federal day set aside to commemorate officers who passed away, just honoring them. So yes. So if you actually set to visit, so why this matters to you, viewers, if you set to visit the US Embassy in Nairobi today, it is going to be closed. Because they're going to be honoring that day.
It's a holiday for them.
Yes, it is a holiday. So kama ulikuwa unapanga kuendea kitu the US Embassy, lala leo.
Your visa itangoja.
Your visa itangoja leo.
And the Star also makes a mention of the political tussle within Kenya Kwanza. Gachagua and Ruto war offers replay of Ruto tiff in familiar twist.
Okay. On to, can take a look at People Daily before we get into the cartoons. So on to, if you have People Daily there, yes. First off, Ruto defends his quote-unquote cheap US flight. But then they have the big story there, tough laws on demos, bringing all this up, matters legislation. They say conveners of protests and assemblies to be held legally liable for damage to property if Parliament passes proposed law. This is after, well, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka just threatening to go back to the streets. Parliament really trying to see if they can tame whatever the country has seen before. And that is the People Daily. Take a look at Business Daily.
Yeah, quick look at the business news. Business Daily on the front page, they talk about high earners being handed tax-free per diems in new finance bill. Proposed law allows tax-free per diems at 5% of gross pay. Bill also exempts reimbursements from taxation. Now, this big story on the front page of the Business Daily, Matters Business. And yes, I think now it's fair for us to take a look at the cartoons. On page 15 of the Daily Nation, we do have the US there, placing Kenya inside a very hot furnace, which is Haiti. But the US is doing this from a safe distance. Moto imewaka, wepeleka hii piece huko mahali kuna moto, lakini hao wenyewe wasongei pale. On page 12 of the Standard, yes, they have an image there of the president, and he has a very big dog there, branded private jet, and a dish. On taxes, and KQ is like a very small dog. But then he says, as you can see, the mongrel on my left is more muscular than the one on my right. He said KQ is more muscular, yet is a dwarfed dog than the private jet. Yeah, it is the president's claim that what he used to the US as his mode of transportation was actually cheaper than what it would have cost if he would have gone with a national carrier, Kenya Airways. That's a cartoon on the Standard.
From the Standard, from dogs to hyenas now. On People Daily, Stano's Tick on page 10. They have quite a huge and muscular hyena. There are some bones. And this hyena says, call me MPs for hire, or House of Greed. And the Parliament of Kenya is just behind this hyena. This is quite a deep one from Stano.
House of Greed.
Yes.
I remember it's a People Daily that last week had a headline saying house for hire. So yes, they're sticking to that same line. So yes,
at least
an indictment on the Houses of Parliament.
At least hurry to confuse.
All right. After the break, State of the Nation. Today, being Monday, our panel is in. Honorable Dr. Mombingaru will be in studio. Kipruto Rapkirwa, Philip Kisia, and Samuel Pogisio. Do stand by for that as we take a look at the big headlines. And of course, you can be part of this discussion as well through our social media pages on X TV47 News and on Facebook TV47 Kenya. My X handle is @FredIndimuli.
Ayerungita _2047 is our SMS number. You can always text us 0793-267-279 is our WhatsApp number. Just talk to us. Tell us how you're feeling the show for today, how your week has been, what you expect for this particular week. It matters politics, matters lifestyle. What do you expect? Talk to us. This even as we take a look at Today in History, as we take a short break. Today in History. On this day in 2013, the African Union asked the International Criminal Court, ICC, to withdraw crimes against humanity charges against Kenya's leaders, including former President Uhuru Kenyatta and President William Ruto, and transfer the cases to Kenyan courts.
Hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first.
give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of
let
three.
other people know that there is such a condition and there are people that has it.
All right, abandoned hustlers. That's a big headline on the front page of the Standard. Welcome back. This is the Morning Cafe on TV 47. My name is Fred Indemuli. Time for us to take a look at the state of the nation, and I think that's probably one of the most interesting descriptions of what's happening in Kenya, abandoned hustlers. This has to do with the budget and what's happening in the budget planning. But we'll be looking at that as we continue. Allow me to introduce my panelists this morning, my usual power panel every Monday. Honorable Dr. Mumbingaru, a former East Africa Legislative Assembly member. Karibu sana. It's good to have you.
Good morning. Yes. Good morning, Fred.
It's been a very interesting week, and I'm sure you have a lot to share with us.
Yeah.
We also have Bwana Samuel Pogisio, former Minister ICT. Karibu sana, Bwana Pogisio.
Thank you very much.
Philip Kisia, former town clerk in Nairobi, expert in governance. Karibu sana. It's good to have you in studio. I've been looking at your tweets, and you're not holding back. We'll be looking at that also as we continue. And finally, Bwana Kipruto Rapkirwa, former Minister for Agriculture. Karibu sana.
It's always my pleasure.
So the biggest debate, and there's a lot to talk about, a lot is happening within Kenya Kwanza. We'll come to that politics. But before that, the debate about the jet, the mode of transportation that the president used to the states. continues to elicit a lot of debate. There's even a statement that I can see KQ has denied and said is fake, talking about the same. And the question is, are we making creating a mountain out of a molehill? Because even the president himself has seen it fit to come to Twitter and defend his mode of transportation. All news channels are doing calculations on how much it would have cost to use different, of course, everyone is talking about KQ. But then again, it could be argued that this is a president. And on such a trip of this magnitude, one that you do not engage in quite often, even for someone of his stature, that probably his transportation should be treated differently this time around. Dr. Ngaro.
Wow, Fred, good morning.
Good morning.
I have heard the hustlers complain, and they are referring the president to his own words. Let everybody live according to their means. Even for such a state visit, the hustlers are demanding that he should have treated them fairly by traveling KQ. It is cheaper. They know the calculations. In fact, they were talking about it was less than $40 million, 40 million Kenya shillings. They are angry. And they're talking about betrayal by the president. I think he will have to come out with a calculator on a blackboard where the hustlers can see it, and talk about this is the cost of a business class, KQ, KLM, British Airways and Lufthansa and that kind of thing. And therefore surrender the total for each airline and his members to justify to the Kenyans. And I'm not talking about the figures that people like Philip Kisia can calculate. I have seen Kenyans seething with rage. Yes, he's the president. Nobody's questioning that. And for a state visit, I'm sure he would have done something better than that. He should have done something better than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when Apogisio, this is not the first time that William Ruto is being criticized for the mode of transportation he's chosen. In fact, this is being referred to as Hustler's Jet 2. He's done it before. Are we seeing a pattern here?
It's definitely a pattern, and I think there's been so much noise from the hustlers themselves that forced the president to actually try to answer and respond. And as you can see, his response on Twitter is very brief, and he knows that he can't convince them. You cannot convince them. It's very difficult. The trend is there, and let me tell you, image is everything. Whatever you say, the first impression by the public is that, first of all, he should have given us this information before he traveled. He should have tried to tell us how this is going to be cheaper than any other option. And without even asking the why, but really just how, and then ask another how and another how, until you arrive at really the basics of, if you look at KQ is the neediest of all these airlines. And this invitation has been known for such a long time that if they needed to configure the seatings and everything, KQ would have done it very easily. And they would have gotten the latest.
To the president's comfort.
Exactly. And they would have created the latest arrangement. And even, I mean, the aircrafts are very good, you know. KQ would have loved to make that kind of money, to get them out of the hole in which they are. And you know, government actually is part owner of KQ. You would say, if this is your business, this is your business. If this is your business, you should really be putting money where your mouth is and trying to sort out that issue. And so I do believe that there is a lot of ill-advised decisions on certain things that should not be repeated if possible.
Yes.
The reason I say this is that we have had many presidents travel to the US, and none of them has done this in the past, all the way from President Moi. I remember when President Moi used to go, he would get probably, sometimes it was British Airways or something like that, or KQ. Uhuru himself never tried this kind of thing. So this is the first time we're seeing a situation where the hustlers are actually the ones, now the hustler, head of the hustler, chief hustler, is the one that's doing this. There is a way in which you want to impress your host. But I thought you'd impress your host more if you really came simple, you know.
Or if you landed in Kenya.
Yes, or a well-branded, yes. So I don't know. It's a mixed feeling at the moment, but apparently no one can offer a good enough answer. Yeah.
Well, the president himself has tried to explain himself, and it is rare for the president to come out to try and explain his own expenditure. He's been criticized before for so many different things. He never comes out to explain. He apparently felt the need to come out, but if I may ask, as the Gen Z ask, is a mathing?
Fred, let me say this. Let me also agree with my brother, Mheshimiwa Pogisho, that a president's safety, comfort, style, and image is important. Because the president of a state, a country, and therefore we must accord him that, those privileges. But at the same time, you know, you must weigh certain things very carefully, even as you're trying to protect a certain image. One, you're on a begging mission. You're just a beggar. And when you're a beggar, you must do some of these things in moderation. You can't overdo them. I think my president overdid what he did, because if you look at the equipment that Kenya has, and I want to talk facts here. You know, I have the privilege of having a son who is in aviation. So if you look at the equipment Kenya has, I think it's a Dreamliner 787-7 or -8. The equipment that was the president used at a very exorbitant price of 200 million shillings is, again, a Boeing 737-700, I think. Now, what issues do I have? Number one, in private sector, we should have asked ourselves, is there any better way we would have delivered the same results in a better fashion, economically, efficiently? Is there any better way? The question is yes. Now, one, like Pogisha said, there's a set tradition. We've had Arap Moi, we've had Emilio Mwai Kibaki. They never hired jets into the US. Because one, in fact, now we have our own flying directly into New York with no stopover. I think it has a flying any time of almost 14, 15, 16 hours. This one had to stop in refuel in Spain. Then the president is the promoter number one of the Republic of Kenya. He should have been seen to promote our brand, the pride of Africa, Kenya Airways. Now, what about, you know, you look at even the staff morale, the captain in the cockpit, the staff, the hostesses who were flying the president, you should have boosted their morale. Now, if you look at the costs, I saw him tweeting yesterday, and I think the president is taking us for granted. I think the president, has assumed that all Kenyans are children. They have no capacity to understand anything. I have done a simple math. By using Kenya Airways, we would have reconfigured the aircraft. We would have even sent maybe 2 delegations in terms of risk. You know, you spread the risk. Why put 31 VIPs in one aircraft? Supposing something happened. Supposing it happened, I'm not saying it could have happened. We would have lost 30 people. Why couldn't they have split? Because we have time for planning. You have one delegation leaving a day before, and then the other follows. The cost of sending that delegation was less than $200,000 if he had used our pride of Africa. Now, so, you know, I mean, from a hustler, you know, he saw the hustler narrative, that he's a modest man, And I know he came from modest background. But he should have already removed those rough edges of trying to appear important at the, at the cost of the public. These are taxpayers' money that you're using so extravagantly without giving a hoot. I think there he really scored very poorly.
Okay.
And if I was President Biden, I would have given him no money, because you can't live in opulence and you're coming with a ball to beg.
But probably it's just the kind of person that President William Ruto is, that the presidency does not necessarily change a man. He did this well as deputy president. Why would we expect any different of him as president?
You know, Fred, at some stage we believed his story. Personally, I believed, and I worked with him for 2 years with the hope that he has matured and he has changed over time, because I knew him before he came to parliament, when he was in YK 92. But it seems he has not changed. But what worries me is not even the cost, is the answer that he gave us yesterday. I would have expected him to give a spokesperson, either state house spokesperson, a chance to be able to go into details. We don't expect the president to be dealing with all these details, to tell us exactly what it cost and what could have cost if Kenya Airways was used, or any other airline for that matter. But the answer he gave us marks some kind of arrogance and also disdain for public opinion. Disdain in the sense that if people are concerned and you are not giving them satisfactory answer, just telling them it could have been more expensive to travel by Kenya Airways. It's like telling me, because we do some little farming, that I leave my tractor, then I go to Mheshimiwa Pogisho, I use his tractor, and I pay 4,500 instead of fueling my tractor at possibly 1,700 and plowing the same acreage per unit area. Now, number two, he should have been informed that even the senators and the congressmen in America, they travel economy. And it's like me now, knowing that you own possibly a certain model of a car. What can we say? Let's say Toyota Premium. Then I'm coming to borrow 2 million from you and I arrive in V8. That also creates some kind of situation that you are likely to say this guy is not serious. If he has this kind of car, how is he coming unless he's a con man? Okay. So it worries me, because what the president doesn't understand is that all Kenyans are going to carry the burden of extravagance, because they're saying if this is what he's doing and this is what he's coming for, then even our money is not safe.
Okay. But he may argue that probably whatever goodies he came back with from the US probably justify the kind of expense he incurred. And I think I'll allow you skip as we try and get you some water, Pole.
Yeah.
But Pogisho, now if we may focus on some of the goodies he came back with. A deal for the dualling of the Mombasa-Nairobi highway at 475 billion shillings. He may argue that, hey, this justifies the means, surely. How much did I spend? How much did I come back home with?
Actually, I heard Isaac Mwaura try to explain it that way as a spokesperson, explain that he can spend that much because he's going to bring much more. First of all, maybe he could have gotten even much more. Because, these things about what you get when you go begging, when you go asking, there is a cost to it. But should you incur this cost just because, you want to say this is what, what kind of parent is that? Take yourself as a parent who goes to ask somewhere, but already spends what was existing in the house. That's a lot of money. 200 million, by the way, is a lot of money by any standard in an African country. I would not use that line to justify. Partly because some of these things are things which have already been worked on, like the road, it's going to be a toll road. It's going to be just like our expressway here. It's going to be the biggest and the longest toll road, I think, in Africa. So, yeah, it's quite a business, but it's not the reason for you to spend that kind of money. It is And so many other things that have come. We've seen military jets and so on. So it's a good thing.
But the trip was worthwhile.
It was worth it.
We must admit.
And it's usually thought through. But this question of how you travel, that first image that you give people, that you're extravagant. And on this platform, we have actually said before that this government has tended to be very extravagant, even at the local level. So we're just extending that extravagance beyond the local level and making it almost international. I'm sure the talk of town, let me tell you this, I think the talk of town in Washington today, as we speak about it here, is about that jet.
Yeah, it's just the opulence on display. But Kisia, you don't seem to agree that the trip was probably as productive as we're trying to say.
No, you see, I agree with my senior to some extent that there were some goodies that were given. But you see, I come from private sector. That's where I spent most of my time. I only was in government, public sector for about 7 years. So I look at things from a private sector perspective. You see, first of all, the Americans say there's nothing like a free lunch. Nothing. When these so-called development partners, they say they're giving you something, the first thing that you must do is to look at the detail. So the devil is in the detail. So I took some time to interrogate these things that we're calling goodies. All right? Mheshimiwa Pogish has talked about a road that is being tolled at 471 billion Kenya shillings. Okay? It works out to about 1.16 billion per kilometer. That's the first thing that Kenyans must take note of. Again, okay, it is business we have given the Americans. It's not a favor they're doing us, for heaven's sake. We would have gone to China.
A lot of that money will go back to their own contractors.
We would have gone to China, I mean, this is money that will leave this economy to America. So we have given them business. They should be thanking us. We should not be thanking them. The other amount I looked at was housing. Again, business to Americans. 23.5 billion for housing. Look at what they're giving us for education. 4.7 billion. That's compared to what they're taking out. Then there's something they're calling modernization of National Police Service. Less than 1 billion shillings to modernize. And then they say it's modernization. Most likely it is equipment they are going to give us. And you can imagine the amount of money which is spent in terms of servicing. Again, money back to America. Look at the money they have given anti-corruption. 500 million shillings. Corruption is a big thing. It means that they have allowed this administration to continue their corrupt ways. That's why they're allocating a paltry $1.5 billion shillings. Then they talk of 23 billion from Coca-Cola. That's business. Coke is not a government entity. It's a private entity. It's business to Americans. Then they talk about Kenyan companies, 90 billion. Again, it's business, private sector. Then they talk about IMF loans to Kenya over 4 years. Look at what they're giving us. Again, it's business to IMF, 0.6 billion shillings. Then, the criminal justice system, at least they tried, they gave them 2.4 billion. Then poverty and malnutrition. How much have they given us? 2 billion shillings, 2 billion. Look at what they have given us for electricity. Improving electricity, 500 million. It's shameful even to accept such a money, 500 million. What can 500 million do in terms of electricity in this country? Then you must be careful with an American, smarter than an African. You are going there to beg. The guy gives you 5.7 billion shillings. For who? Civil society and democracy and humanitarian rights. This is where NGOs are coming in. And this is where now, in another 2-3 years, the NGOs will take over. William needs to be a bit more careful. Of course, education gave us a small little amount, but the last one that can never be given a value is sending our troops to Haiti, 1,000 Kenyans to Haiti to be slaughtered. This is war, and we're going to fight gangs. These are criminals. They fight vicious wars. You can imagine if we lost one Kenyan, we have lost that 1 trillion shillings, because a human life is not quantifiable in terms of money. So to me, from where I sit, this is the same arrangement, the same treatment Mobutu Sese Seko was given on 12th, I think it was 9th or 12th December 1986. Same script. What happened to Mobutu? What happened to him? I hope it doesn't happen here.
Wow. And of course, the Daily Nation cartoon on page 15 makes reference to what's happening. The US seemingly placing Kenya inside a very hot furnace that is Haiti, but staying a safe distance away, not to get burnt. But Bwana Kirwa, it's collectively cumulatively about almost 1 trillion shillings in deals, whether loans or business or projects. This is not something that we can dismiss. 1 trillion shillings, whether business, whether half of it still goes back to Americans. It is something worthwhile for Kenya, don't you think?
First of all, let me say this about the jet. They say take care of the coins and the pounds will take care of themselves. So even if it is 200 million that you are saying is a paltry amount, given the fact that you expect 1 trillion to come from America, it is where frugal means are supposed to take place, so that you are prudent in the management of your resources. The second issue is that most of these monies are not coming for social transformative agenda, where the vulnerable of our society are going to be lifted from the bottom. It is going to projects just akin to IMF and World Bank projects that they have supported all over the world. Grandiose projects that have little meaning to the ordinary people of Ukambani, where that due courage will pass, and many other Kenyans. We may use it, we may find it convenient for those of us who can afford perhaps 5,000 toll station from Mombasa to Nairobi to save on fuel and traffic. But the issue is, there is the principle that by the rule of the thumb, for every $1 that you get from America or any other of these big projects, big brothers, $7 leave the country anytime. So these trillion shillings that you are thinking, we are going to lose 7 trillion. So the net effect, we are going to push away 6 trillion to other economies, not our own economy. Because I would have expected a lot of it to go to farming, not because I'm a farmer, because that is where the bottom of our society are, to livestock subsector, which was devastated by drought the last 2 years, and they lost millions of livestock worth about 3 billion within Kajiado, Pokot, Narok, and all these areas which are said to be marginal. They lost tons and tons of money in terms of livestock decimation. So you would have expected there. But you see, they are coming just to fund their own projects. Because just like the way Philip has said, it is like giving me space in your compound to build a house and I rent it out. Yes, you might have a nice house in your compound, but that house does not belong to you.
Wow.
I'm going to rent it out and the money will come to me. And therefore the space you've given me may enhance the space within your compound again, but it is not your money.
Dr. Ngaru, I know now you've had a chance to, to listen to all those views. Do you agree that it wasn't worth as much?
I look at it from a different point of view. And what makes me boil with anger with the rest of Kenyans is the content that we are being treated by the government. You know, the fact that His Excellency the President is taking us for granted and talking to us like we know nothing. And then his spokesperson, Honorable Isaac Mwaura, the language he used to explain the cost got into people's nerves. So whether the 1 trillion is going to make impact or not, already we are fed up. And for sure, like my colleagues are doing the calculations, we know that a lot, or probably half of that money, will go back in one way or another through the experts that will come and do the equipment and those procurement procedures that make the American companies take lead over the Kenyan companies. But apart from that, I'm also feeling like the technical teams around the president they're supposed to be highly qualified professionals, but they're not doing good to the country. The road, the during, the expressway is a good thing, but the cost is exaggerated. I'm not an engineer. Let me first say that. But to do a kilometer for 1.something billion, excuse me, I need somebody to break it down for me. And you look at the technical people behind it, it's like they don't even know our priorities, that they even do not understand that the president was talking about bottom up. I don't know what bottom up is. It's not making sense.
Actually, on the standard, they talk about that. The reference on the front page is about the priorities of the president. And they even say on the inside page, I think on page 4, sorry to cut you short, is that Kenya Kwanza unapologetically abandons the better bottom-up economic transformation agenda and moves on quietly. Do you see a sense of that in what they got from the US? That probably it does not necessarily align with the bottom-up agenda.
That's exactly what my feeling is, because I would expected the funds to go down to the people who really are at the bottom, the hustlers, or something that will make an impact to change their lives from where they are and bring them up. So that's the content I'm talking about. It's the, I want to be soft than Philip Kisia, the arrogance exhibited by the leadership of this country is annoying.
It's annoying.
It's annoying.
Very interesting choice of words there. Annoying.
You know, I'm trying to be nice, but it's not coming out. Okay. You know, and for the executive to come out and first of all talk about the cost, KQ versus what he did, and KQ is the national carrier. Even if it was more expensive, we should have at least said, imerudi nyumbani.
Okay.
So there is a sense of confusion. Confusion. And it's mixed with pride and arrogance and confusion. Allah is affair. You know, so what?
Yeah. Mutadu.
Mutadu. That's what comes to my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bwana Pogisio, if we may look at that headline on the Standard, this appears to be the trajectory the government is taking. Very serious budget cuts on some of the crucial sectors of the economy. In agriculture, 12 billion, 0.6. In health, over 10 billion, because you're talking about even issues like vaccines, which are underfunded, issues like HIV treatment, which are underfunded. In fact, there is no allocation for HIV or ARVs in this budget, curiously. Education, 55 billion shillings, 48 billion for roads, at least probably they got the expressway, and 25 billion for petroleum. You would expect that for a government that is on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, that would reflect even on the kind of goodies they seek from partners and donors alike. Do you get that feeling, or do you agree with this headline that probably Kenya Kwanza or the president seemingly appears to be abandoning the better agenda and moving on to other things?
Well, Fred, the standard headline is basically what is on the lips of Kenyans today. You walk around Kenya today and you find very angry people, very, very angry. We find them on the road, whether they're driving or riding or walking. People are not happy. If we had to do a happiness index, I think it would be very low at this particular time. And so to speak about abandoned hustlers is to agree that people have moved on. People get into office and they have moved on. And I think the hustlers themselves know that and they feel that way. I do believe that when you speak about taxation, just this finance bill itself is already a very big indication that, sorry, but we are moved on. We are moving to another place altogether. This is who we are now. The people who fly the private jets, the people who high flyers in this town, the people who showcase whatever they're wearing and buying. We've already given the impression that we left you guys early. In fact, if the president wants to get back to trust levels of this people, he must get back to his earlier message, which he promised those people, that Mama Mboga, border guys, all those guys who are real hustlers, look where they've been left now.
No one is talking about that group anymore.
No more. And so Kenyans are not stupid. They actually know that you have left. So they're waiting for you to come back and say anything else about this thing. So I'm proposing, in my view, that apart from the headline being like this, that everything that has been said has already been abandoned, not just hustlers, but everything that has been said has been abandoned. And a small class of people who now run this country have chosen that they want to showcase what they have more than anything else to prove to you that, okay, we stepped on you, and where we are now, we're flying, and we're going. That can be very dangerous for an economy, very dangerous for a population, because the population is angered by just the situation that they're helpless. And so you find today in Kenya, I mean, families hurt themselves, people kill themselves. Lots of people are doing this because, I mean, it's very angry when you've been comforted and given the impression that you're the most important people now, and then all of a sudden you've abandoned them. So I do believe it can be a curse on this situation because you played on the lives of people who now regret why they did what they did.
Okay. Yeah. But it sounded good appealing to the hustler nation during the campaigns, but not necessarily when you were running government. An administration probably could be forgiven to change tactics midway. Bonakisia.
Fred, I don't think you can change your tactics midway. You can't change, let me put it this way, you can change your tactics, but to improve on what you had promised. You remember, President Ruto is in office courtesy a social contract he signed with the people of the Republic of Kenya. He made certain promises.
He signed charter?
He signed. It's a social contract. He made certain promises that he'll better the lives of Kenyans. But from his actions, I think he's doing the opposite, right? Completely the opposite. And really, the hustlers and Kenyans were abandoned from the day President William Ruto took over office. He has shown by action, he has shown using all manner of things that he didn't mean what he said. That actually he meant the opposite. So, and you see, sometimes I think the voters are to be blamed. When President Uhuru kept on warning us, said, no, I've worked with the gentleman, and I think I understand him fairly well. You are diving into danger. Be warned. But did Kenyans heed that warning? No. They decided to go with the hustler mentality. So sometimes I feel sorry for Kenyans for the decision they made. But that, you know, every decision you make has consequences. Looking at the budget, Fred, you are talking about transforming a nation. You cannot transform a nation, a country, when you cannot feed itself. How can they touch areas like agriculture? A country is respected when it can feed its population. But which ministries, which sectors are you going for? Agriculture. Look at health, public health. Diving into public health. I mean, a nation that is unhealthy is as useless as nothing. Look at education, the future of our children. A budget cut of 55 billion shillings. Look at roads infrastructure. And the road you're talking about, the 471 billion, that's money from private sector that may not come even this financial year or next financial year. But in their budget, they've cut it down by 48 billion. Now, is this a sign of transformation, or is this a sign of accepting that they have failed? If President Ruto was actually a serious person, there are areas that he can save. There are areas that don't produce anything. They are not productive areas. And I've said this and say it until I go 6 feet down. His office consumes over 400 billion shillings. Is it an office that generates anything? It's administrative. Why can't you go for your own office? This young man in Burkina Faso, he has gone for areas that don't make sense, cutting down salaries for ministers and what have you, and putting that money in productive areas like agriculture. This young man is a captain, age 35. He has not been on this earth for too long. At least William is about to head to the 6th floor. So he should be better experienced in such matters. But again, they always say that, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. This is who he is. Power has now revealed completely, has brought up the real face of President William Ruto. If there were any doubts, power now has exposed him.
Wow. Bonakirwa, you've been at the helm of the Agriculture Ministry. And this was before even 2010, much earlier in this millennium. And one may wonder, when you see such a slashing of the budget as far as agriculture is concerned, you're also a farmer. William Ruto has also been Minister for Agriculture. Do you understand this kind of thinking when you're talking about bottom-up economic transformation agenda, and then you see this kind of highlight?
Fred, not when we run the risk of even having famine next year. Because even in just simple science, teaches us that whenever there is plenty of rain like this year, next year is likely to have not so good an harvest. Number two, many parts of Ukambani, I've had the privilege of traveling to some of those areas. A lot of maize have not been checked. A maize crop, if it is underwater for 24 hours, it is likely to die and it will never grow again. And you see plenty of them, plenty of farms running that particular risk. You would have expected that the president would be able to set aside slightly more resources for purposes of ensuring that we are able to stimulate in areas where the rains will come later this year, to stimulate some kind of growth in terms of food production. As Philip has said, any country that does not feed itself is like a family without food. And the father comes in the evening drunk, and the children have no food. Well, good enough, the president doesn't drink, but it worries me when he treats the sector the way he has done. Also in the midst of the fake fertilizer that we were visited with a few weeks ago, and yet something went, and I know that case is now closed, is as good as done. Because, and I kept on insisting even here, that Mithika was just a pawn in a game of chess. He he was not going to go anywhere. The owners of the scandal were somewhere behind him. And that's why they were doing a lot of simulations to see what is the best route for him to escape. And they realized that part of the Constitution, that when a report does come from a committee and they say he has no case to answer, that is fait accompli. The president does not have to act, Parliament does not have to revisit the issue, and it is done, and all the fertilizer, fake fertilizer, is being given to us. And I remember the president telling a farmer from Narok that yes, we are able to compensate people. Now, who are they compensating on whose behalf? That yes, if let's say you are compensating me, then you must own up. Now, the story of fertilizer has just disappeared. The government has not even said who brought that fertilizer. Where was it manufactured? Because at times when you go to the background of something, it is not to resolve the past, but almost to prepare yourself for the future. And that's what we expected from the president.
The initial budget estimates are amounting to over 4 trillion shillings. They slashed that by about 350 billion shillings. But now we're seeing that the areas affected, some of them were even previously funded, like in last year's budget, but this year they received no allocation, zero allocation. Issues like funding for HIV, money for education. Previously the budget was there, but now we're seeing, despite a bloated budget, the budget cuts are going to key sectors of the economy. This is an indication that this government has totally shifted from the bottom-up campaign mode.
Yes, they have shifted, and they are telling us in very many different ways. What makes me wonder is that even if a number of his ministers have not been in government, he has been in government as a cabinet minister, as a deputy president, and many other things. And he's been a member of parliament. I know my year mate in college, the prime cabinet secretary, has been a minister, I think at age 29. Have been a vice president and a deputy prime minister. And we've got Juku Nandungu at finance, the attorney general, the dockets that matter. So the issue of inexperience to me does not arise, because they hold the driver's seat. I'm sure before the documents come to the public, they circulate around some of those offices. And that shows the sheer contempt that the shift you are talking about is the same, what I do. So you live with it, you are going to pass it as it is. You've got nobody to question. And look at what has been given to the civil society. The civil society also...
From the US.
Yeah, because that's another driving force. But the good thing about Kenyans is that they now know, with or without those facilities, the drive in Kenyans' hearts and minds to come out and take the government hand on. Signs are already showing. And I can tell you, I will not even go into the depth of what has shifted and what has not shifted. They don't care. That's the attitude.
Is there a question of consistency, Bonapogisio, the fact that there are so many things that President William Ruto appeared to talk about in the initial stages of his presidency that he has now gone quiet on? One of them, the Hustler Fund, no one talks about it and no one knows how far it went. Now the issue of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, it would appear that they are going quiet on the same. This, if may I say, lack of consistency, what does it communicate to Kenyans?
Well, the situation at hand is overwhelming, in my view. You make so many promises and you find out that you really cannot live up to them. That pressure is overwhelming in itself. And you have to prove to yourself that you have moved on and people have been abandoned. And so I believe that some of those things we're talking about may be happening. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with the Hustler Fund, for example. But there's money in it, but I don't know how it's run, who is benefiting from it, and so forth. We've moved on. We have moved to social housing. We've moved to something else. And we have to try and explain what this social housing is all about. We have to try and explain why we need to tax you. And that why we need to explain to you is by actually taxing you, not by telling you why, it's by taxing you. So you look at these reductions over here, and you can see there's a big desperation to try and justify our budget, a big desperation. And so, especially when you look at the sectors that have been taxed here, and I want to come back to the issue of agriculture because it's so basic. This year, apart from the drought to come, the production of maize is already compromised. That fertilizer that was used by the farmer is actually showing right now. The farmers now require something else to recover from that fertilizer. And so the productivity in areas will be very low. And then, of course, we hope that maybe some other areas will probably help save the situation. But then after that, then you have a drought situation coming right after here. So maybe we'll go back begging for food internationally because that's what we are good at doing. So I do propose, in my view, that discussing the bottom-up economic transform, whatever agenda, is no longer a very attractive issue. Mm-hmm. And the more we keep talking about it, the more we think it is it's a matter actually. You know, I look at all those advisors who advise economically, and how much money they're earning themselves just to be there. Mm-hmm. And they'll push for an agenda like this because the more they push, the more the money they take. And I saw all of them in the US. They just went traveling. It's the people are not as silly or stupid as they seem. They're seeing all these things. Because you came out with a program called Bottom-Up Economic
Model.
Whatever, transformative agenda, as you called it. But the transformation is on top. You know, it's no longer at the bottom. And so I do feel that there's a lot of work to be done to repair that loss of trust. And this is exactly where the trust deficit has come very clearly. You can't. And I saw Mwaura Isaac saying to people that huyu mzee ameenda ameleta sijui nini, and he's using it as a very, very basic example of how a mzee in a village, he called this place a village, Kenya village. And what you say to people can actually make matters worse for you. How you communicate, how you don't look like you have compassion on the people when you speak. You lose them. And I think in this country, we have lost compassion, something called compassion. Okay.
Now, the questions about the consistency of government projects and government programs, consistency of government communication, and it would appear that a lot is lacking because communication starts, then at some point it dies down. Even on the planting of 15 billion trees, it happens in flashes and keeps disappearing. That in itself is communication. That you start a fire and then after a few months it dies down and everyone is left asking, okay, what happened to that program? What happened to that project? A case in point, last week there was a headline on the Business Daily talking about the PS for housing, saying that 20 billion shillings that has already been collected for the housing project through the housing levy will be reinvested in government bonds and bills. And one wonders, was there not a plan on how this money would have been absorbed into a project that the president talked so much about? This is an issue that causes confusion that what exactly are we working on? What exactly is this government working on? And where are we?
You know, Fred, you've answered yourself. So I don't know. As the lawyers would have said, there's nothing useful for me to add. But what I must say is that, you know, President Ruto and his team promised people what they are calling better. Bottom-up transformation agenda. But what Kenyans must now understand is what my brother Pogisha said. They were not talking about better. They were talking about TETA. Top economic transformation agenda. So at the top, they have transformed. You can see in every aspect, those guys are transformed. The way they live, the way they operate, and so on and so forth. But having said that, let's mark that one. We have moved from better to TETA. So you continuing tethering. You see, when you see inconsistency in communication, one thing that pans out, you have no vision. You have no clear vision. Okay? Because when you have a vision, and it's a shared vision, you all speak from the same script. It doesn't matter who is in the office at that time. Something happens to me, touch wood, and I'm called by my creator, and Fred comes in, you pick from where I'd left, because there's a shared vision which is properly documented. Kenya has a shared vision, Vision 2030. We have about 6 years or so to end this vision that we had, that Kenyans agreed that this is what we need to do in 25 years, okay? But instead of looking at Vision 2030, they are creating their own projects. Some of these projects that they are crafting are projects that have been crafted by the so-called advisors who have their own agendas. The agendas they have, is not about transforming Kenya or transforming the lives of the common mwananchi. So we lost the plot from the time President Ruto took over. He ignored he completely threw out of the window Vision 2030.
Do you think that's the main problem?
Yes, that is it. When you have a vision, what does a vision do? It guides you on how to proceed, on how to move. But immediately you move out of the vision, you are like a headless chicken. You're just moving all around. And whatever results you bring back is what you're expected to deliver to your boss. So if the President Ruto was as focused as Emeritus Mwai Kibaki and kept to the vision and delivered his programs within the vision, you talked about tactics. That is where now tactics are allowed. You can come up with new tactics to deliver better results.
The same vision.
The same vision, to deliver better results at a shorter time, at a less cost. Okay? So tactics are allowed there, you can change. But this administration is like a headless chicken. They have no vision.
Wow. Interesting conversation here. I want us to come back now and take a look at the politics that's happening back home while the president was away and what has been festering. I don't know if we're due for a break right now. If not, we'd like to listen to what the deputy president said when he was in Keses on Saturday. Then we take that conversation from there.
Come a principal assistant to the president. I have a responsibility to make sure the president succeeds. And that is my focus for now. Sasa iko wengine mumeshikana hapa Rift Valley na wana vijana wengine huko kwetu ati wanapanga siasa ya 2032. Nyinyi mnataka kumrithi Rais William Ruto akiwa hai. Sasa hii upuzi ya 2032 ni ya nini?
Kazi yetu ni kufocus kusaidia rais na naibu wa rais kujenga nchi. Na usiogope wewe, your excellency, sina uwezo kukuadvise, lakini wacha niseme kidogo ile nilipata in the last 10 years. Usiogope kupigiwa kelele. Kama utapigiwa kelele, ujue kiti yako ni bure. Lakini kama kiti yako ni tamu, lazima watu wakuwe wanang'ang'ania, wanataka hiyo utamu yenye wewe unasikia kukalia hiyo kiti.
Now, this has been a big discussion the whole of last week while the president was away on his state visit to the US. A lot of this back and forth was happening back home. The fact that the deputy president was, or it was said he was unhappy with some few things, actually was made clear at the weekend when he himself, while on a tour of Western Gishu, came out and said exactly what he felt. Yesterday we saw MP Sudi also answer the deputy president in one way or another. And it features on a number of the front pages. You can see Sudi hits back at the DP as allies cry foul of a budget. That's on the front page of the Standard. On the front page of the Daily Nation, will the center hold? And they have images there of the deputy president and his boss. And they talk about the political marriage between the deputy president and his boss is facing a litmus test as a cold war between the top two honchos rages. Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, habari hii pia imepewa kipaumbele. Wanaongelelea ushirika wao watikisa mlima, urafiki wa Ruto Raila waingiza baridi mlima Kenya kwa hofu ya kigogo wao kutengwa. Bwana Kirwa, you'll have the first go on this. It was very interesting, one, yes, for the deputy president to go to his boss's backyard to raise these issues, yes, that he had previously not talked about. He had not explained what the problem was, and he went there. Secondly, when the president comes back from such an important trip that has been highly popularized, highly talked about, highly covered, yeah, his absence from the airport to meet his boss was very conspicuous. Yeah. Do you think the deputy president is acting right? Let me ask it that way.
Yeah, you know, Fred, from the corner of the country where I come from, when two brothers quarrel, you are told not to intervene. You know, we parted ways as brothers with them 2 years ago when I left them in UDA, and I went my own way. So I'm hesitant to want to apportion blame to any of them. But what I request of them, because it is very critical, when the two quarrel, you realize how much time we wasted the last term of President Uhuru. People pulling on in different directions and almost not being responsible for what was happening. So the two, they made their bed, they must lie on it. But good manners should prevail. They should realize that they are holding that space in trust by the public of Kenya. Mm-hmm. And the public demands of them, whether they have a lot of linen that is dirty, they keep it at the backyard. They should not show it in public. But let me also say this. This has become almost a characteristic of that particular office of the president and his deputy. We knew even 2016 that President Uhuru was not going to sit pretty after his re-election with William Ruto. And it came to pass. The first PG, I'm told, is transpired that Uhuru was livid before even the re-election, the election was nullified. And I had the privilege of asking the president now, when he was a deputy, where did the rain start beating you? He gave me a long story that was very interesting, but I just reserve the details to my books in future so that I do not prejudice what was confidential and I say it in public. But the details never gave me the crux of the matter. It was a very nice narrative. He told me how the re-election was done, how the PG was done, all through. Mm-hmm. But it never gave me critical reason where they parted ways. And that is where Kenyans need to investigate, because today is Rigathi and Ruto. Tomorrow it will be you and Dr. Mumbi, if the two of you are going to hold those offices, because it is a culture that we have created. And you've seen, even across county, I make a lot of observation. Whenever I go to an account and I meet deputy governor, I want to ask them their relationship with the governor. Okay. And none of them has given me a good picture of the governor, and none of them has given me a good picture of the deputy. So,
are you suggesting that probably it's the system as designed?
It is our own mannerism. We are ill-mannered. We don't trust each other. We are hypocrites. I pick you as a running mate just because I want to win the election. I'm not interested in teamwork. So once I win, I just must rubbish you and make you look like a PA. To me, we don't respect each other.
When it comes to the relationship between the president now and his deputy,
yes,
and you say you have some information that you may not necessarily share with us here today, but do you see like it's more of the same? It's a repeat of exactly what happened back in 2016, as you said?
It may not be a perfect repeat, but there are so many similarities. And I was just taking it further. I'm privileged to be here with the Honorable Bokisho. He's been a minister, and he had these assistant ministers. In many ministries during my tenure, assistant ministers were complaining about ministers.
Okay.
Personally, I became assistant minister twice before I ascended to the office of the minister. And at times, there is some conflict that is created by a team of officers, technical officers, so that to make the assistant ministers look like they are sabotaging the minister. And the minister now develops some cold feet. I remember one of my PSs, I had many, so if I say whatever he said, one of my PSs, I told him, because one of my assistant ministers was in charge of research and extension, the other one was in charge of land development and regulatory services. And he happens to be a lawyer. So I used to tell him, why don't you allow assistant ministers to read the document that is supposed to go to the cabinet? Because at that particular level, there is no secrecy. It becomes confidential and secret when I sign and I forward to the cabinet for it to be processed as a cabinet paper. Otherwise, some of the officers, even within the ministry, who are dealing with those documents are people junior to the assistant ministers, and their oath of secrecy is lower than that of assistant minister. He told me, they don't read. And yet one of them was a lawyer. One of them by then had better education qualification than me. I told him, don't lie to me, because I believe this is how ministers are undermined. And we used to have every Tuesday a meeting of the big five, so that we distill the issues. Who is going for this trip? Who is going for this field day? Who is going to answer these questions in parliament? And that was the only way. So I have a feeling that neither the president nor the deputy president are to blame. It's these fellows, I call them make-believe, who surround the presidency and behave as if they were elected collectively with the president.
Okay.
How can you answer a deputy president the way the Honorable Sudi was answering the deputy president? He's the deputy president. Even if you are bitter, go complain to his boss, so that you deal with those issues in-house. Otherwise, this is the height of bad manners.
And the deputy president himself made mention that some of those people are those claiming to have proximity to the president. For it to come out that way, it means that they've been unable to resolve these problems behind closed doors. That in itself means that probably it will take too long or never. They will never be able to resolve them.
Fred, politics also has a part of management. From where I sit, the deputy president shouldn't have taken it to us in Gishu. He would have had a closed door meeting to mention such issues to his boss. But I am not him. He has a big post. He knows how to manage his affairs. Because once it moves to the field like it did, we are able to pick it from there and make it worse. So that Honorable Sudi has now an opportunity to talk back at him. He asked for it. That's the reason why I'm saying it's a management issue. But for me, the most interesting thing, now others are bringing up the issue of my boss. Because now he's working.
On Taifa Leo, yeah.
Yeah, he's working.
Urafiki wa Ruto na Raila. Waingiza baridi Mlima Kenya.
Yeah, And I'm wondering, for how long? For how long will the name of Raila Odinga be brought into every? Anyway, they brought it and they've been bringing it to win votes. Now, he's supposed to be out of the equation, and any problem they have to bring his name back into the fold. Our politics, as a country, the whole country, we have not learned that, you know, we are not moving forward. Mm-hmm. And we are not static. Actually, we are retrogressing. And it puts anxiety to those who care about this country. Yet, when you listen to the ordinary Kenyans, I don't call them hustlers. They called themselves hustlers, but I prefer not calling them hustlers. I call them ordinary Kenyans. I listen to them, and I find a group of Kenyans that are more informed, that they are taking responsibility. They know they gave the leadership of the country to people who are not trustworthy and who don't seem to understand where they are taking them. Now, why I talk about anxiety is because with Raila Odinga taking a break, what will Mount Kenya use to go in, to be elected, to fight who? Because from the MCA all through to the governor and anybody else, it was about fighting Raila Odinga. He is quiet, but they are still dragging in his name to make a point. I am hoping, I'm a prisoner of hope, that in the next few weeks, the president having had a break, 3-4 days, when you are not surrounded by people who cause confusion around you, may call his top guns and say, I listened to quite a lot of things that were said in my absence, and give themselves a few hours to understand. I hear in the political field that he doesn't take advice from anybody. But this is about the country. It's not about a village. It's not even about a community. It's about the whole lot of Kenyan people. I wish that he would embrace reasonable contributions from people who care about this country. Okay. But as far as it looks, he's not also getting a lot of help from his deputy.
Oh, really? Could the deputy be actually frustrated? Because he paints a picture of a very frustrated man, probably with no access or no opportunity to have this issue addressed, Bwana Pogisio, in a different forum. That's why he felt the need to come out and air dirty linen in public.
I'm afraid I actually listened to the deputy president in his speeches, and I realized the man truly is under siege. First of all, without understanding what is his position vis-a-vis his colleagues in who is the leader of the mountain. Because he really wants to speak for the mountain, but that's been undermined. And there are forces, you call negative forces, that have undermined that. And so he's struggling to get back to the saddle in terms of his overall leadership in the mountain, on the mountain. And I think one of the things that President Ruto should start doing, in my view, is to make sure that he creates an image of a national team. But when the team starts to tear themselves into regions, you find that you're losing a lot in terms of the efforts to help you run the country. A deputy president is potentially the future president of the country, potentially. and not a regional or sectoral leader. And what this president has, the deputy president has done is retained himself and entirely tied himself to the mountain, to the extent that everything he talks about is the mountain, Milima, everything. So he's telling those people that you guys are trying to destroy my politics in the Milima, and he's telling it to young billionaires. These are people who have just become billionaires suddenly.
They can cause enough trouble for you.
I mean, you can't do anything about it. They can answer you right there. And it's truly, sometimes you think, really, one of the things that must happen is that Rift Valley must produce their own billionaires, right? So that the dependence on the billionaires from the mountain should actually be diminishing, okay? So it's a creation of a strength of sorts. And it's a threat to Deputy President. Those guys can answer him like they want. First of all, they're the ones who attracted him to come. Bring him here and put him in a situation where he could not defend himself. But also, his own speech rendered himself almost defeated. He sounded like a person who has been defeated completely. Because if you had the last part when he was saying that some of you here have now ganged up with some fellows from the mountain, we know who those fellows are, and we can see that. But what are you coming to cry about? You are the deputy president of the country. Make sure you are national. If you're not, in fact, there are many times when he has been missing in action, and he's showing that he's angry about something, but he doesn't know how to say it. Now he wanted to say it there, and he made a worse mistake.
Wow.
He made a worse mistake. So the people are not very good with seeking advice. But if I were the deputy president of this country, if I was him, if I was Nagashagwa, I would sit down and start seeking advice about this position, about this Milima thing, and really seek to say, where am I in this matter?
Okay.
Am I just assuming that I'm the natural leader, I'm the leader? Should I begin to think otherwise? So he has a lot of time to think through.
Okay.
And the person who really comes out very clearly, in my view, about these matters is Ngujiri of Nakuru, who actually named them. He came actually with the names. He says, you guys, these are the people who are disturbing us in this place. But we have created our own force in the Rift Valley, and probably are going to grow to the extent that we can tell you guys, hey, we can now disrupt the mountain.
Wow,
yeah.
Interesting. And before we get to hear more about what the leaders had to say, Bwana Kisia, what is your take on this whole hullabaloo about the deputy president's position and his woes?
Well, you see, Fred, I really feel for Rigiji, because I've always said that, and sometimes they say that I talk about him in a very flowery language.
It was one instance.
But this guy is an honest fellow, and I feel for him. Because, he speaks truthfully. But you see, this is a man who came and, Kenya's politics is tribal. This is a man who was handpicked by William. And he knew he was handpicking a man who was not very strong in every aspect. He didn't have a formidable financial base. He didn't have the tribal bloc behind him, the Kikuyus. He didn't have them. So he knew what he was doing. He picked a weak guy. But again, if you look at the entire architecture of William Ruto, he made sure that all the strong characters from Central Province were completely crushed. And he was left with people who had baby punches, people who played to his tune. So Rigiji happens to be there. He's trying, and what Ruto did, or has done, is to ensure that this man is in a pressure cooker. Under lock, is completely locked. The man cannot breathe. He can't come out. He makes an attempt to come out, but the pressure is too much. He makes an attempt, pressure is too much. So the advice given by my brother...
Are you saying that these wars the deputy president is going through are engineered by his boss?
They're engineered by the boss. Oh, come on. You live in a different country. They're engineered by William Ruto. He has made sure. And you see, that's why he has not spoken about it. Because if indeed, you know, when you live in the leafy suburbs, particularly in Europe, and there's this dog which has bad manners, it keeps on barking, even when it should not bark. There's no danger, but it's barking. It's barking. Do you go and start talking to the dog, or do you go and talk to the owner? Mm-hmm. So you see, let us forget about the dog that is making noise. Let's look for the owner. If I was Riggy, I would look for the owner's dog and tell him, listen, Chief, I contributed to making you who you are today. Mm-hmm. And if you think that I'm of no use, please allow me to go. In fact, if I were him, and if he's smart, okay, he should hang in, not because he's gaining anything, but also to inflict the same pain that William Ruto inflicted in Uhuru Kenyatta in his second term. So, Fred, the buck stops with
the president.
The president. Because as a president, if you look at our constitution, actually the so-called deputies, they have no functions, they have no duties that are defined, clearly defined. They just say that you're a principal assistant. So you depend on your boss to allocate you duties, okay? I think that needs to change. But even without that being clearly defined in the Constitution, if you're a good manager, I remember when I took over KSCC, I was given a deputy. And I said, what are the duties of a deputy? I said, no, find something to give the deputy. Do you know what I did? I said, I cannot have somebody earning a salary and doing nothing. I gave my deputy clear functions. I gave her the whole marketing and sales department, which was the backbone of KSCC anyway. I say, this is your docket. Run with it. Now you fail, I deal with you as your boss. Okay. So you can't start blaming these little puppies that are moving around and making some noise, which should not be made in the neighborhood, okay, in the leafy neighborhoods.
Okay, let's get to hear what some of the leaders had to say about the issue we are discussing now. Then we'll come back to finish the show.
Mi naomba watu ya bonde la ufa, tafadhali. Sisi tuliunga Rais Ruto mkono kwa hiari yetu na kwa kupenda. Na tunaendelea kumuunga mkono. Tunaomba heshima kidogo. Musijaribu kutupangia siasa ya Mlima Kenya na kutupangia uongozi wa Mlima Kenya.
Na kuna wachache tu wanapenda vitina. Na naibu wa rais, kwa sababu mimi ni msema ukweli kama wewe, tutawataja majina siku moja. Ndio hawa wananchi tulaani hawa, tufukuze kabisa kama Chesawilia, tuwapotee hii dunia, waziwache kuharibu hii serikali. Na wengine wao ni marafiki wetu na tunawajua kwa sura, majina, namba za simu, girlfriends yao, bibi za
kura. Tunaelekea mbele iko sawa. Tuendelee kushikana, tuendelee kujenga nyumba yetu, ile nyumba ya UDA, na tuendelee kujenga umoja, na tuendelee kuheshimu viongozi. Na ni vizuri tujue kura tulitoka kwa milima, na mahali tuko tunatambua rais wetu na naibu wake wasitushikilie tuende.
All right, that's what other leaders had to say about what's going on with the deputy president and his relationship with some of the leaders within Kenya Kwanza. And now an opportunity for you to give your final thoughts. And let me just call it parting shot, because we only have about 3 minutes. Start with you, Bwana Kila.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fred, for the opportunity. Just allow me to say that the deputy president is under siege. Remember, he was not allowed the chopper, and that was reported in the media. Yesterday, a number of MPs were called not to go to his function in Uasin Gishu. And this is because I think the boss has decided he wants to part ways with him. And if there is anything I can advise him, he would rather sever the relations now than face a humiliation in future.
Wow. Dr. Ngaru.
I respect the vice president because of the position he holds. But he has a decision to make. Whether he wants to continue being humiliated, because that is humiliation as far as I'm concerned. And that will increase the anger amongst the communities in in the mountain. Not because he is a nice person. No. What I have heard is they are taking it as a treatment of the 47% votes that they gave to the president. If he had a spine, a political spine, and those that are going around with him and preaching the gospel, if they want to check the country from the mountain, let them do a one press conference, resign from all their positions, let the vice president, the deputy president resign with his team, with members of parliament from WUDA, and I can tell you they'll create a crisis in this country that will make everybody come together and say, hey, hold it. But continuing moving around with somebody from Nairobi and another one from Laikipia and another one from Murang'a, trying to do those things, it's not going to work. The boss has decided he does not need him, not the mountain. He is looking for other people to take up the position. But if the mountain has pride, let them talk as a community, call up their people, say it's time. Okay. And they resign, and you know what will happen? There's going to be a snap election.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, it's just that the president is back from the US now, and it's back to basics. You're back home, back to the usual problems. And yeah, one of the things he has promised to do is to crack down on corruption. So I really hope that he lives to his words, and this country now is riddled with corruption. And let's see if there are any changes that are going to be made.
Okay. Finally, Bwana Kisia, you wrap it up for us today.
Yeah, very quickly. Now, you know, this president's trip to the U.S., and I say that the Americans believe that there's no free lunch. And you know, some time back, about 2-3 years ago, Dr. Masanga had warned us about George Soros. You people in the media, I think I want you to dive into this trip and see whether, you know, the so-called partners who are coming to assist us with building the roads and what have you. I don't know, but I think that it needs to be interrogated. Finally, because Rigiji is my friend, I want to advise him. He needs to seek for forgiveness. He spoke very badly about the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, a man who is in the grave. Where I come from, you do not talk to a man in the grave because he cannot respond. I want to take him to the mausoleum in town CBD to apologize to Mzee Kenyatta. I will accompany him to Mama Ngina Kenyatta, where he was encouraging, Rigiji was encouraging his small little puppies to make palatable words, you know, showing the nakedness to our first lady, first lady, you know, threatening to urinate at her gate. I'm willing to accompany Rigiji to Ishaweria to go and apologize to Mama Ngina Kenyatta. Finally, he needs to look for the son of Jomo Muigai Kenyatta, that is Uhuru Muigai wa Kenyatta, to apologize and let him work with other leaders from Central Province. Kenya is tribal and he knows it. He needs to get his people behind him. Let us not pretend. You're my friend, come and look for me.
All right. Thank you, Philip Kisia, leadership and governance expert, also a former town clerk of the city of Nairobi. Kipruto Rapkirwa, former agriculture minister, Samuel Pogisio, former ICT minister, and Honorable Dr. Mombingaru, former MP, East Africa Legislative Assembly. Thank you so much for your time at TV47 and for helping us understand some of these big discussions that we're having. Now, as we continue to examine the details of the Finance Bill 2024, we are once again astonished to see how dismissively the government treats the health sector, in particular, the fight against HIV. It would appear that the government has failed to allocate funds for antiretroviral treatment in the 2024-2025 budget. This is not only a grievous oversight, but also a dereliction of duty that endangers the lives of at least 1.3 million Kenyans living with HIV. The Ministry of Health had requested 14.1 billion shillings to procure these life-saving drugs, but the Treasury failed to include this in the budget. This oversight comes at a time when donor funding, which has historically supported HIV programs in Kenya, is diminishing. Currently, the cost of maintaining one HIV patient is approximately 20,000 shillings per year, a significant financial burden that the government appears unwilling to shoulder. The lack of budgetary allocation for ARVs paints a troubling picture. A picture of a government overly reliant on the generosity of foreign donors to safeguard the health of its citizens. This approach is risky, as donor funding is never guaranteed. Foreign donors, including the US President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund, currently finance about 66% of Kenya's HIV budget. This is just wrong. It is critical for the government to step up and take full responsibility for the health of its citizens. Too much dependence on the goodwill of others is precarious and down